What's up guys, Manny from Motomillion, and today is dyno day. So guys, here's today's subject. It's a 2023 S1000RR that is bone stock, except this SC Project slip-on that it has. It has a CRT carbon can. The bike has just under 4,000 miles, so it's broken in. For the viewers that want to know, like I said, it's completely bone stock. We're going to run it on the dyno. We're going to get the stock numbers, and as always, we have our RPM reading that's going to be attached to the bike as well, so that we have some proper reading, and we're going to have our torque numbers as well. And once we get the stock numbers, we're going to install our BrenTuning Stage 1 Flash on it, run the same dyno procedure again, and let's see how much power it makes, or if it doesn't make. But we're here to find out exactly what you can expect from your Stage 1 Flash by BrenTuning. Stock dyno graph. You're probably seeing a bunch of lines here because we ran it in 5th gear, we ran it in 2nd gear and 3rd gear. 2nd and 3rd gear on these bikes are the most restricted gears from the factory. 5th gear is not as restricted, as you can see on the dyno graph. So the graph you see in the bottom over here, that's more highlighted, let's say, that's brighter, is your horsepower number. And obviously, since we get a proper RPM reading off the bike, we have the proper torque numbers. And take a look at it. So the green line is your 2nd gear. You see that 2nd gear and the 3rd gear, which is a red line, there is a big dip, the flat spot in the horsepower. But what's interesting is look at this torque numbers. It just dips down because the ECU just cuts your throttle, and I guess it probably pulls the flappers back of the throttle bodies. I don't know exactly the science behind it, but I know that the bike is restricted. And with the Flash, you guys will see that the gains in this region is going to be considerable. We've seen 40 to 50 horsepower. Again, the whole purpose of this video is that we're running the bike on the same day in under the same conditions, and on top of it, we're taking an RPM reading like we always do to make sure that everything is as precise and consistent as possible. So now we're going to flash the bike, we're going to run the bike again, and we're going to find out truly what you can expect by putting a BrenTuning Stage 1 Flash on your K67 S1000RR. But this is pretty much the same for the K66 M1000RRs and also the K63 S1000 single Rs as well. And let's go over the numbers. So the highest horsepower number we got is 194.15 at the rear wheel with 81 foot-pound of torque. That was our 5th gear run. I'm actually surprised. I thought it's going to make less power on the stock form on the dyno, but here's our number. We're not fudging it. We're going to show you the highest number that we got, which is at 194, and let's flash it and find out what happens. So guys, those are some impressive numbers, and I want to remind you guys that we're not influenced by anybody regarding the products that we carry. So in this case, BrenTuning was not really involved other than we purchased the Flash from them. They didn't send it to us for free. we did whatever you guys would do. We sent the stock file to them, and then we received our mod file. And as you saw, we ran the bike completely bone stock on the dyno. And on the same day, within just half an hour, we put the flash file on there, we ran it, and you guys might have seen that we used the GS911 afterwards, and we always reset all the adaptations of the bike after we flash it. And also I want to mention, we do install an RPM lead on the dyno. That's the only way that I know that you could get a proper reading, because we've said this before, the horsepower formula is torque times RPM. It's divided by a constant number. And if you don't take a proper RPM reading, and if you're getting the dyno to guess that RPM number, you're not getting consistent numbers. What do I mean by consistent numbers? If I go and take the same bike to that same dyno that we go, it's going to be very close, maybe within 1 horsepower or less. Of even the conditions don't change it that much, unless if you go on a 100-degree day and a 20-degree day, maybe you might pick up 2-3 horsepower. But that's why I always mention that we take the RPM lead. And in this case, we took the RPM lead and we did it the exact same day so that there's no more questions. Also, this is kind of what we do. We do our own research and development before we offer something to you guys, so that if I come and tell you, or if I pick up the phone, or any of the Motomillion team members pick up the phone to give you guys advice, it's tried and tested by us. So here we go. This is our dyno figure. This is the 5th gear. Stock, the bike did actually quite a good figure. So it did 194.15 horsepower and 81.02 foot-pound of torque at the rear wheel. Again, this is a good number. I was guessing probably 185, 187 horsepower. That's what the previous S1000RR did. When I say previous, this is a 2020 to 2022. But we know that as they get newer, they're making more and more power. Again, this bike also had 3,900 and change of miles, so it was properly broken in. After the flash, it did 203.19 horsepower at the rear wheel and 83.29 foot-pounds of torque at the rear wheel. So again, to my surprise, I wasn't expecting the number to jump so high. I was thinking if it did 194 with flash, it's probably gonna do, I don't know, 197, 199, because I know that these flashes are about all peak numbers, but that goes to show you guys, it's a stock bike with a slip-on. There's nothing else, no air filters, no IAT relocation kits. This goes to show you that this stage 1 flash is your bang for the buck on this model of motorcycles. The K67 S1000RRs are heavily restricted. And I want to point something out to you guys. Look at that dyno graph. Every single RPM that you see, that graph is above, and at some points it's well above the previous graph. So the blue lines that you see are the stock runs, and the red lines that you see on this graph are the flash runs. And take a look around 7,600 RPM. Just right there, there's about an 8 horsepower, 8.1 horsepower gain, which is, again, is quite a bit. Don't get caught up with peak numbers, right? Yes, it's impressive. The bike is making 2 or 3 horsepower at the peak, but below the peak, it takes you time to get up there to build the revs. And the bike is making more power consistently, and it's also, it's flatter, right? The torque curve doesn't dip down as much anymore. So it goes to show you that this makes the bike truly faster. But let's get into the 3rd gear and the 2nd gear pulls that we did. That's what really gets impressive. So in the 3rd gear run that we're seeing right now, the graph is still legible by most of us when we look at it. So the red and blue lines that you see on the bottom of the graph, those are horsepower figures. So your blue line is your before, and there your red line is the after. And we really didn't go digging the holes just to see how much of the max gains are, but the graph tells you a lot. Take a look at this, at 7,400 RPM, the bike stock was doing 74 horsepower, and at the same RPM with the flash, it was making 112.87 horsepower, guys. That is a gain of, if I do my math right, 48 horsepower, just above 48 horse. That's almost 50 horsepower of gain in just that RPM range. And again, if you take a look at this curve, it gains all the way to the top. And then if you take a look at the torque figures, which is on the top of this graph, and that blue line is the before and the red line is the after, the torque is at 7,400 RPM, it's 52.66 pound-feet, and it goes all the way up to 80 foot-pounds of torque. And that dip that you see there, That's all the restrictions coming in, and the flaps are closing on the bike. And when I say flaps, it's your butterfly flaps that get closed even if you're going full throttle. The bike's not giving you full throttle, and that's what this is doing. And you can see that the BrenTuning Stage 1 Flash removes all of that. And then when we go to the second gear pull, that's when things get really interesting, because if you look at this graph, this is a little bit of a messy graph, not in terms of messy because the gains are messy, no. The gains are really good. But if you take a look, that blue line that's on the top, that dips all the way to the bottom of this graph right here, which is crazy because the torque drops all the way down to 41 foot-pounds, which puts it below the horsepower figures in that RPM range, which is insane. And if you take a look in that same 7,600 RPM, the red line you see on the top, which is the after torque line, the after flash torque graph, you've gained 34 foot-pounds of torque. It's almost doubling the torque of the bike. That shows you how restricted this bike is in second gear and third gear. And most of us use those gears around town. And even if you're on a racetrack, those are the gears that you're coming out of a corner, you're building speed into the next straightaway. So all of this really matters. And it kind of, you know, before the flash, if you ever ride this bike, the bike is very dull. But after the flash, the throttle response is super sharp. And again, it's the same thing with the horsepower figures. If you take a look, the bike is almost dead. The horsepower, that's the blue line on the bottom, is flatlined. It's only at 59.68 horsepower at 7,600 RPM. But on the flash run, you can see that on the same RPM, it's at 109 horsepower. That's 50 horsepower right there, guys. So these are the real gains that you could expect. And it's not just a horsepower story. So if you guys watched the video and if you guys paid attention to it, go back if you haven't. Listen to the bike. So after the flash, the bike actually got louder. Why? Because your exhaust flap is staying open. And for some of those guys who always say, no, the flap actually is there to make torque, it actually is not. Here's the proof on the dyno graphs that we saw. The bike is making way more torque without actuating the flap. It's there to quiet down the bike to meet the Euro 5 emissions or the noise emissions rules. So again, the bike actually sounds really nice with just a slip-on, and it goes further than that. All of your quick shifter mapping is changed. I know these bikes have some of the best quick shifters out on the market, but it also helps with the quick shifter mapping, and overall your temperature control is in there, and a bunch of other things. All these restrictions being removed, it makes a bike a brand new bike. And it's super simple. We have a video that we show you how to flash your bike with a BrenTuning Stage 1 Flash, just to show you how easy it is. But also having that handheld makes it super easy. You do it at the comfort of your home. I just want to mention, guys, when you're doing it, you guys saw us, the bike was on a charger. Put your bike on a charger. Don't do it without a charger, especially these new bikes. It takes a little bit of time. It takes 20-30 minutes to flash it. You don't want a voltage drop. But there you go, guys. I want to say this is kind of consumer advice. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there, guys. There's a lot of dynos that we see that people just put it on the dyno. They don't take an RPM reading. They show you these wonderful numbers. You know, they show bikes making 240 horsepower, which I laugh at. I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to say who these people are. They're all over the place. I can't even think of one name anyways, but there you go. That's the Stage 1 Flash from BrenTuning. Just like all of our other videos, you could check the description down below for the links direct to the product. If you have any questions about these, put them in the comments below or reach out to one of the Motomillion team members. And I also want to take this time to ask you guys, a lot of you guys are watching these videos, but not a lot of you guys are subscribed. It really would help us with the algorithm for YouTube so that more of you guys who are into this reach to this content. It would mean a lot to us if you could just hit that subscribe button. It would make us really happy. Also, if you like the content, it gives us that drive to make more content like this. If there's any other bike that you could think of that you want us to take on the dyno, maybe do such comparisons, let us know. I'll try to make it happen. But as always, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Until next time, guys, have a good one.